I know.
Yeah, and it's fine now.
Yeah.
It was just a weird minute or two. So, Tonya,
Yes.
how about that PaizoCon online?
It's a thing. It's happening.
We're very excited that it's happening. It's interesting that there's been about a month between when PaizoCon was canceled as like a traditional meat space convention and it went online. So why wasn't it ready to announce at the time PaizoCon was canceled? And what is the plan for PaizoCon PaizoCon online in general now?
I think a lot of it was the fan-driven aspect. I mean, PaizoCon itself is a fan-created convention that we kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger and then just rolled into the Paizo family. And it was very evident in the first week after we said, hey, we're not going to be able to do the physical convention because of real-world problems. Our fans were very upset. And so we started poking it, well, we don't run online conventions, but if we did, what would it take and who would we need to bring in? Grabbed our venture officers that work in the online space, asked them for some guidance, some help, what would they need? You know, started talking to you guys, started talking to Peyton, what does a stream look like if we're all in our homes? Started poking at our own technology to see if we had the means to do it. And then we had enough yeses that finally came together that we said, okay, well, let's let this information out and let's do this.
And since you are mentioning that PaizoCon started as a fan-driven event, I want to give a shout out to Tim Nightingale, who's in chat now and who helped make PaizoCon a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, exactly.
Hey, Tim, you are awesome.
So was it really PaizoCon Online wasn't being seriously considered until the fans were like, no, you have to do this?
We had kind of said, what does this look like? But it was more in passing meetings of, well, what gives? And then we started having independent groups start saying, well, if that weekend's not taken, we could run something here. And we had a group over in Europe that said, well, we'd kind of like to do something. And then we had another group, and it became very evident from the volunteer side and the game master side that they were going to run on that weekend, whether or not there was an official PaizoCon or not. So again, it was kind of that upswell of, well, if we've got 5 different groups, we might as well band them together. And then I went and talked to Bob Junquette, our premier events coordinator, and went, well, and he's like, online convention? I was geared up for PaizoCon. And I'm like, what give? So it took a lot of buy-in from various pieces before we really felt comfortable saying, yeah, we could all do this.
Excellent. Are there any other people that you want to give specific shout outs to for being like a major contributor to making it happen?
Jesse.
Go for it.
Jesse Davis, he is the regional venture coordinator for online. And when we knew we had to move the games over, Bob and I kind of reached out to him and said, well, you're subject matter expert. What say you? And can you do it in 4 weeks, 6 weeks? He was like, yeah, no problem. That'll be easy. We've done it in shorter. And I went, okay.
So what is PaizoCon Online going to look like in your estimation?
It's got to look different because just
what?
I lost something. Okay. Don't touch anything. Because we have to put things on different platforms. But
Sorry.
We're trying to keep the feel of PaizoCon and what it was there and whole. So we want to have announcements. We always have a grand banquet that we tell a lot of new things at. We want to keep that feel. It's got to have the gaming because that's an integral part. But the staffer interactions is another piece of it. And so we wanted to try and figure out a way, could we bring some of that over? And we think we've got a few of the panels and we've got some interactions that we're going to have that will allow people to have a little bit of that feel. Hence the use of some Discord channels, because that's really a good way to sit and chat with a group of friends.
All right, so let's go one thing at a time, because you listed just a whole bunch of things that I want to talk about at length. So let's start with the gaming. So what is the gaming going to be like? I know Warhorn has been mentioned in the blog post. So how is it going to be coordinated? How is it going to feel like this is a convention going on and not just people that are individually running online games?
Also, this is going to be a lot of people's very first time jumping in an online organized game.
That is. So we're using the Warhorn to put up a whole bunch of games right now. We're actually putting more games there than we think will fill so that GMs can run what they want to. We know that the burden of setting up a virtual tabletop is a little bit higher in some cases, or the learning curve is steeper than just sitting down and going, oh, I've run scenarios before. I open it up, I grab my maps, I get my minis, and I'm ready to run. So we want people to choose what they want to run and when they want to run it. We're also running it in a 24-hour environment, which means everyone in the world should have a game at a good time for them, but it does mean a little bit more on the logistics side and on the administration side. But we're asking the GMs as of Friday to go into the Warhorn again. We're going to clear them and open up registration, and they'll be able to pick all the tables they want to run. And then once they're set, we will go ahead and clear everyone else on the 16th to start signing up for games. And we're trying to plan that one strategically so that it opens up worldwide at the same time, and all of our fellow people globally can get in there, not just the people centered in the US, because while we're working off of Pacific time zone, we realize not everyone that games is. Plus, we have a whole bunch of resources for these first-time GMers or first-time players that we wrote a couple of blogs a few weeks ago that highlighted the VTT tools and how people could get started, and some really good guides that had been community produced. And so we will resend those out and give a whole bunch of resources to GMs that want to try this for the first time. Or virtual tabletop GMs that want to try org play for the first time, we will talk them through what the little bit of difference is between being an online GM versus being an online org play GM.
It's mostly the paperwork.
Yeah, which beneficially, it will feel like a convention because you're going to get the chronicle sheets and you don't have to fill them out. That will go through the central administration. So the GMs just have to worry about running their tables. Plus all of our convention support that we send out in terms of boons and vouchers and better rates of acquisition will be there as well. So we will have some prizes for participants as they come out and play.
Now, we've mentioned that there will be online gaming, but we didn't say what the games are. So what Paizo games are you're making sure are going to have tables?
We will have everything from the launch of Pathfinder 2nd Edition to what is currently released, including the scenarios that come out during the week of PaizoCon. We will have recent Starfinder stuff, I believe, from the past year. And then we will have some favorites from Pathfinder 1st Edition for the people that are still playing that system. Mm-hmm. And a few extra games that are not actually just Pathfinder or Starfinder. We've got some other people that submitted events to PaizoCon that we're helping them move them over into PaizoCon Online. So you'll see some of those, what would have been games that Sarah Marie would have put together in our schedule, transfer over.
So we're not talking about the special gaming events where you would usually see with Paizo staff. This is fan submit games that just happen to be non-Paizo games?
Yeah.
Okay. What about those special gaming events? Will we see any of those?
Some of them will be off there, but I doubt a lot of staffer-run games. I think we've got a lot more author-run games, though. Since the authors didn't have to make it all the way to Seattle, a lot of them are saying, hey, I'd really like to run my tables. So we're calling them out with special notice that these are author-run.
Here's something that's making me happy about this conversation, Tonya. There's a lot of questions on here where it's like, this would be challenging to do online. And I'm worried that there's just going to be a string of, we couldn't do that, so we just can't. But no, you've been finding like the positive spin. You could play with a lot more authors because they don't have to fly there. That's great. So here's one of those, maybe this is something that's just going to be a flat out no. This is the first PaizoCon for the revised edition of the adventure card game. Will there be any kind of virtual tabletop or tabletop online version of the adventure card game?
There will be. We have 2 ways you can play adventure card game. Tabletop simulator. We've got a fantastic table put together by our VC of Pathfinder Adventure Card Society, Tyler Beck, and he's got a preview special event coming out that I don't want to spoil. I don't get to spoil yet, but you'll want to take a look in the catalog for anything with him running it. We've also got the Adventure Card Game Open that was at Gen Con, so we're bringing that to PaizoCon, and the first ever multi-table Pathfinder Adventure Card Society only interactive special.
Really?
It was written specifically for the adventure card game, not for combining with the RPG.
So I thought I had heard that there would not be any multi-table specials, but does that just apply to the RPG, or is that now not the case and you found a way?
It's just the RPGs. The one that we had been looking at running at PaizoCon, we looked at the online environment, and there's some neat things about it that wouldn't translate well to the virtual space. So we've kind of put it to the side and are holding it for later. The major big interactive that we released for Pathfinder Society won't come out until Gen Con. So unfortunately, that leaves us with not one on the RPG side. And of course, Starfinders comes out for Origins in a couple of weeks after PaizoCon. So,
well, that's still like the positive I was expecting is way outweighing that, or positive I wasn't expecting is way outweighing the negative I was expecting. So a little bit of bad news there, but mostly good news. Chat actually kind of exploded when we were talking about what was going to be offered as online games. And Param, can you remind people how they can participate in live episodes of No Direction?
Indeed, if you want to be here, you can do so by logging on to our Twitch channel, where you can chat with us all throughout the episode. That is at twitch.tv/No Direction. The link's on our website, as well at nodirectionpodcast.com. And we stream every Wednesday at 9 o'clock Eastern, 6 o'clock Paizo time.
By the way, chat, Dustin, I see you're in chat. Check your Discord for a second. I do have a question here from chat. It's from Dungeon Novice. He is saying, is there going to be a way to spectate games?
That I don't know. I will have to go back and see if we can let people into the VTTs that aren't scheduled on the games. I haven't used them enough to have firsthand knowledge on that one.
It mostly depends on the VTT. Like, some of them you have to pay for each user. Right,
so. And since we're spread over 4, maybe 5 VTTs for PaizoCon Online, that's going to be we'll get back to you on that one as soon as we can find more information.
Well, speaking of, if I'm an eager player and I want to play in as many games as possible, so I want to pre-install all these VTTs and get them set up and ready to go, which VTTs do I need to install?
Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, D20 Pro, Astral, and potentially the Foundry.
Astral. I'm not familiar with Astral by the name.
It's that one we talked about last time that is kind of doing the thing that Roll20's doing, Roll20. But they have really cool weather effects.
Okay.
Yeah, and it seems to be a little located about geography. A lot of our European GMs have played around with Astral and like it. Roll20 seems to be the leader, and it looks like most of the games will be a Roll20 format. If you only wanted to download one due to space or time, or just didn't feel like having a whole bunch of things on your computer.
Right. Which is extra cool, because with Roll20, you actually don't even have to install anything. You just get a link in the email, that's why I love it so much. It's like, play with me, click.
Yep.
Lava Being has an interesting question. Are GMs allowed to stream tables on platforms like Twitch? So I think it's interesting because you would technically be competing with whatever panels are going on there, but it would definitely be an interesting way to, if there was some way to label it, to brand it as a PaizoCon online event.
I will need to get back to them because there's some privacy concerns about players who may or may not know they're streaming, and we don't want to put anyone at a table in an uncomfortable position of saying no. So I would recommend that they reach out. PaizoCon Online at paizo.com is the email, and ask those questions direct, and then I can start tracking down some information and get back to them, especially if they have a pre-made table that they might want to have a GM and players already. That might be more feasible than just a group of random 6 players that came off of the Warhorn.
Dr. Mono wants to know, is it the GM who selects the VTT? Is it decided beforehand? And how do they advertise which platform will be used in case that matters to players?
When the GM takes the game and the time slot on Warhorn, they will be directed to give us a little bit more information about how they want to run it and where. We'll make sure that the VTT is updated, information is updated on Warhorn, or ask the GM to go back and update their information so that it's broadcast to their players. but they choose everything.
Also, I want to give a shout out to Twilight Knight, who is in chat and answering a lot of the questions related to how PaizoCon is going to work for gaming. Can you remind people who Twilight Knight is?
And that is Bob Junket, our premier events coordinator. So,
yeah, so people can take him at his word. He's not just someone who's throwing out answers.
No, he's not making things up.
No, and actually, Bob is a super great guy too. When I was just a little baby venture officer, he's the one that showed me the ropes.
Northern Dreamer wants to know, do we know what time Friday GMs will be able to start signups? I want to get a lot of the gaming questions out of the way. Well, not out of the way, but chunked together, because once we move on from gaming, I have a feeling some of the questions are going to lighten up. So do you know what time what time on Friday do we know what time Friday GMs will have to start signup? So I don't know if they're talking about what time on Friday or what time the Friday GMs.
I think they're talking about what time Friday we're opening it for GMs to select their games.
Yeah.
And my gut says 1, but I have to coordinate that with a blog and a few other things. So I would say anywhere in the 11 to 2 range, because we normally put blogs up at 11, and I want to have it done before we get into the afternoon and people take off for their weekends.
Kitsune Warlock wants to know, will there be guides, demo tables, and or volunteers helping GMs and players inexperienced with virtual tabletops?
We will have some HQ staff helping with that in the Discord on the days of the events. And then I'm hoping to open the Discord up on Friday with some GM prep channels where we can dump some information to them as well.
You've mentioned the PaizoCon Online Discord a couple of times, but I don't think we've gone into it. So how is the PaizoCon Online Discord channel going to work?
Its link will be available in the blog on Friday, and you'll be able to sign up with a Discord account into those channels. Everyone will be in the waiting room until PaizoCon starts, so you can sit there and chat to your heart's content in the next 4 weeks leading up to it. And then on the day of the convention launch, we will start opening channels for games that are opening that day, and you'll see more of it open as we get closer to the event.
And you know what some of the channels within the Discord server are going to be?
We've got some panels that are going to be held on channels that aren't going to be streamed on our selection. So that's where some of the PaizoCon events that have been transferred over are going. We've got a after hours section for people to just hang out. We've got one that is PaizoCon Bar that is 18 and older, because we want to let people have that bar experience where you sit around and chat and maybe not watch exactly what you say quite as much. And then we'll just have a general chat for all ages, anyone that wants to come in and participate.
How are you going to virtualize Thirsty's pineapples?
I don't know, but we've got to work on that one.
Oh, here we go. Kitsune Warlock wants to know, can we PayPal Thirsty drink money?
I'm sure he wouldn't say no.
And Twilight Knight also mentions that he is writing a GM flowchart to help aid in the process. That's going to be handy. That's something I'm going to hopefully that'll be made public and not just for GMs that are signed up, because that would be super handy just as a tool to have.
Also, how are we going to give them the full experience of standing in line for 3 hours?
We could open up another...
That's a lot for a PaizoCon line.
I know.
I guess that's the Banquet Line.
I don't know. I've never had to stand in that line.
I don't know. I think the Banquet Line was about an hour and a half last year. And registration was about 40 minutes before they opened. But then Sarah Marie and her team kicked it. And it took 20 minutes to get the entire line through. So I don't think we've ever, at least in recent years that I've been working a PaizoCon, have actually gone over about an hour and a half of standing around talking. But I could open another waiting room just for people to go stand in line if they want to. I mean, I don't want to deny them the experience if that's what people want.
Descriptivist has a question I was going to ask later, and since we're talking about the banquet, online PaizoCon trivia contest. Question mark. The trivia contest is low-key one of my favorite things about PaizoCon. When PaizoCon was canceled, one of the first things I thought was, oh, no trivia.
I don't know.
Yeah, it hasn't been talked about. I assumed it wasn't going to happen, but then some of the things you've said, including a hanging out after hours and drinking channel, make me think that someone at Paizo is very good at thinking about what PaizoCon means to everybody and finding some way of replicating it for them.
You know what? I will go back and talk to John Compton, because the trivia contest has always been his focus and his kind of effort and baby. And I, while Tonya's orphans are close to my heart, I want to make sure that we're not stepping on his toes if he would want to do it. But it's definitely something I could see we could do with some chat channels and some Discord pieces.
When you ask him, if he says yes, can you please describe the wicked Faustian-like grin he will give?
Okay, will do. I will send it in so you guys can post it as an after follow-up.
PaizoCon, the other thing that it means to me is the seminars, for a lot of reasons. It's mutated over the years. What is happening with panels at PaizoCon?
We've got some highlight ones that will be focused with the staff and that we're putting together. That schedule will go up on Friday so everyone can see what the topics are going to be. And then we are moving some of the submitted panels that people said they'd really want to run into the Discord and into other channels, so that we will have a selection of them.
We got a question in here from Suitor79, and I kind of want to add an addendum to this too. Question is, will any of the staff be running the delves on VTT? And similarly, are you guys going to be facilitating people signing up or playing games that didn't pre-sign up?
95% of the games are being run by the Organized Play Foundation and the volunteers. There is not as much staff involvement in the games just because of the way we're putting it together. So I don't expect them at any delves. But I do expect there to be quests on a rotating basis, so that if you just show up on the day, we will find a way to get you into a game, or at least into something, so that, we're going to do a lot of pre-signups just so we can balance our load. One thing we don't know is just how many people are going to want to come, and how many GMs we'll have, how many players, and what the demand level is for each of the time zones. So we need to kind of jiggle that out during pre-reg, but then we are going to have to close down at some point to get ready to switch to live mode. And when we switch live mode, then we'll just do things through the Discord and seating people as fast as we can.
Actually, that leads me to a sort of tangent question, because this is our first chance getting to talk with you since you've initiated these. The new quests are different. They're standalone. They're not released in 4-packs. How is that done now, and how has the community been reacting to that?
They actually are a complete separate workflow process that goes through the Organized Play editorial team. So Linda, Michael, James, Thirsty, while he's Starfinder, is in on our planning and design of them. And from the feedback we're getting is they're helping. They were really popular in the stores because you could run them in a 2-hour section in the evening after people got off work before the store wanted to close. But now that we don't have stores, they're still being run in the online space. Maybe not as much as the actual scenarios, but they are a nice pickup or a nice way to just introduce people to the game. And it also frees up 2 more scenarios that we don't have to take quest pack space for in a year. So it's allowing us to put a little more storyline into the scenario production.
Lava Being wants to know if there will be resources for GMs and players to organize impromptu games during outside of the official event schedule.
We will need to bring them, at least in reporting, into the fold on the day. So what we'll do is we'll just take GMs that want to run ad hoc tables and add them as we can. And I will leave Twilight Knight to help me with some of those logistics about how we're going to funnel that through the official channels so that people can get credit.
Kitsune Wardlock wants to know if there's any details on how boons will work at PaizoCon Online.
Yes, they give them out online. They have a roller system that they use in other online conventions that the online team has run. And so we're just going to use their system since they work well.
Now, how much is this actually I know that you've always had, not always, but I know that you've had a robust online community playing PFS, thanks to Twilight Knight and the other volunteers for the online lodge. Is this helping the staff and even yourself learn a whole bunch new about how online gaming works?
Yes. It's been a learning curve to try and spin up, because it's been our fastest growing region. So I've kept an eye on it and said, oh yeah, that's really great. Keep going. I love the great work, grow, grow, grow. But kind of it's been its own thing, and balancing the in-person versus the online regions, kind of just making sure everyone has toys to play with. But now that everything is online, we've actually got 2 divisions, and the online team is still responsible for their group, but then they're helping all the physical space GMs bring their local FLGS games or their local conventions into the online space as well. So they're doing a lot of mentoring. And then we've kind of divided it. So if this was something that would run in a game store and you've put it online and you've got the same people playing it as would be in that game store, consider that online table is a physical space replacement, and you can have all the physical benefits to that table that you would have had in a store, to the point that we've said if you order anything from that store in the last week, you can use that purchase for the retail incentive program, because these stores really need help, and if they can do curbside delivery and have some way of an online ordering system, please help your store, because we don't know what this is going to look like on the other side. So yeah.
I have to actually thank you all for the retail incentive program, because when I ran games in store, when that program started, and more specifically the one everybody always wanted was the please don't kill my character option. I would sit down, I would say, everybody hand me the receipts, and everybody would look at each other, panic, then run into the store, and I'd just open my Pepsi and wait. And the managers and employees at the store were very happy that an entire rush of gamers chose that exact moment to load up on swag.
Yeah, I mean, we from a company have always tried to balance supporting the retailer with having our own online presence and our own online retail division. And this was one of the ways we could give something back to the stores that was unique to them, because you can't get the benefit for having a subscription or ordering something from the website.
I mean, I get nervous when I play in a venue that doesn't have the please don't kill my character option.
There's been a lot of requests for it to go to conventions. And so we had to come up with if there's an actual dealer's hall in the convention that's not food or your hotel room, that you're purchasing from vendors that have brought their product there, you can count those receipts in a convention table. So, we kind of give a little space there.
How am I going to earn that boon or that benefit at PaizoCon Online then?
There may be some merchandise available from the store that will be revealed on Friday in the blog. There's some neat things coming there.
Oh.
All right. Add shopping to the list of things I was not expecting to get a yes for. One of the best pieces of advice. One of the best pieces of advice I've seen for how to support stores that aren't able to open right now is to buy gift certificates from them. If people buy gift certificates from a store, does that still qualify them for these boons?
Yeah, because they're paying it forward and trying to put some money back into the economy. And, we know it's hard. We know a lot of people right now are functioning on maybe not as much as they had prior to the shutdown. They've been furloughed. But anything that we can do to help each other out is just going to keep our industry strong on the outside when we get, through all this.
And
Smart Goblin wants to know about swag bags.
That is something I haven't figured out how to port online. So unfortunately, that one has to be a no.
Now, I want to just bring attention to this to also thank some people that are going out of their way to make sure that gaming happens. The Paizo warehouse team are back at it and distributing games. I got a shipping notification. I was like, what? Why am I getting this? So we just want to make sure that they know, hey, we all appreciate you. Everybody should know that they're doing it. in the middle of Seattle of all places, and and I like very much all that y'all do for me.
They are kicking it. It's this whole move on has been kind of interesting and brought a lot of challenges. The editorial team, we're working from our homes, but we keep sending in the books to upload and get them to the printers. So everyone on down from the creators into the operations staff into the warehouse have just, we want to do this and we want to keep providing games because, I like to see smiles on people's faces. That really is a goal of mine. So
I will say that I definitely got a smile when I pulled out our review copies this last week.
Yeah, people in chat are also giving shout outs to the Paizo warehouse staff.
Yeah.
Well, they're already awesome anyway, because they're usually way on top of their game, and I've gotten like incredible customer service from Paizo's online team. So I can see why they would be extra deserving of praise right now.
So small but mighty. That is the slogan of that team. They do mighty things with the numbers they have.
Oh goodness! Oh, how small is small but mighty?
I think we're at 5 warehouse folk that are in there fulfilling everything right now.
Oh boy! Well,
yeah, impressive.
So Kate Baker was announced as the guest of honor for PaizoCon before the physical event was canceled, and where the rumor is that she will be the guest of honor at PaizoCon 2021. So does that mean there will be no guests of honor at PaizoCon online?
There are none. We looked at how we were setting things up. We looked at being able to feature people, and we really don't want to say, well, here's your chance. You get less than you would get in person, but you're not eligible again because we've already used you recently, because we do like to rotate through the guests. So we kind of said, let's just not put any guests of honor. Let's feature all of our authors that are going to be there. Let's feature the panelists that are going to do their thing. And then we'll regroup and look at 2021 and go from there. So when we start planning that one, we will hear more on those announcements.
Kitsune Warlock in chat says, our guest of honor is you.
No.
I'm just going to hold up a sheet of tinfoil in front of the webcam.
There we go. We can put the Amber Southman want you to join the Pathfinder Society.
So without a banquet this year, what is the plan for handling new product and new adventure path, new announcements?
All of our panels and our streaming. We'll have some blogs in there. We're going to split mixed media. We kind of looked and at first said, well, do we make a 3-hour presentation? And decided that, especially in an online format, with people having day jobs, with people trying to work from home as well as participate, doing one long stream probably wasn't the most effective way. And so we're going to parcel out the information a little bit longer and throughout the week.
So similar to how the Gen Con announcements are handled then?
A little bit more that way. I don't want to spoil too much because more of this is coming out on Friday. And also, if it changes between now and then, I don't want to give you guys misinformation. But you will get all of the sneak peeks and the bits that you normally get at a banquet. They'll just be in a different format. So Jason's got surprises. Rob McCreary's got some things to talk about from the Starfinder creative director angle. James Jacobs got information on the Pathfinder creative angle. Our managing developers are going to be in the panels. Adam Diggle and Amanda Hammond telling us things that are coming up. All of the dev staff is going to be in there. We've got some editors coming in to talk nifty things. So it really is a wide swath of Paizonians that will be out and about sharing the news.
What's going to be happening on Paizo.com while all this Twitch and Discord stuff is going on?
We will be putting information up there. We've got the tech team working on a new website. So that's what's coming out Friday with all of the beginning information. And then we've got rolling updates that will be hitting it with everything, Twitch streams, reminders, some emails. If you don't know we're having this convention, by the end of it, we've not done our job properly because the marketing team's really spinning up a lot of plans as well.
Lava Being is asking, and I thought we already covered this, but will there be a digital version of the banquet? So yeah, we
No.
did
Yeah.
cover that.
Mhm.
Yeah. All banquets, all the time. Bring your dinner, and you can watch the podcast here and eat at the same time. So there, you've got the experience. Once again, we deliver.
It's all banquet.
Yeah.
All banquet.
I was about to say you can come to the banquet in pajamas, but that actually wouldn't be exceptional.
I need to go source, the little logo in blue pajamas somewhere. I don't know if they make them.
What about cosplay? Is there any room for people that are cosplay enthusiasts and Pathfinder enthusiasts to show off their stuff at some kind of PaizoCon online official venue or channel?
I think we could make that happen with some of the tech that we have at hand. If people want to submit photos to the PaizoCon online email, we can see what we can put together. Just make sure that you give credit to who's in the cosplay and maybe who the photographer was, so that we make sure that we're letting everyone know who the awesomeness is coming from.
Now, when I'm on Facebook chat, I can press a button and look like a cat. Can Paizo make it so that I can press a button and look like Ezrin?
Ooh, that's intriguing. I don't think we have the capability yet.
An Ezrin costume.
Talk to me after the show, Ryan.
Oh, all right.
So, not yet, but maybe.
What are you looking forward to most about PaizoCon Online?
Interacting with all of our fans, watching them participate and get to talk to each other. Really, the fans are what, at least especially from my position, going to all the conventions, getting to talk to people, that is what I live for. And it's been 8 weeks since my last convention. I'm having withdrawals. I know. I never thought I'd stay home this long. I think my family's getting tired of me and are ready to go live in the backyard. But there's an energy there to interacting with the fans and then having them tell us back, even just today in the chat and the questions and fielding all of that. And it brings something to the table, and it kind of, charges up our batteries to go back into, well, what do we want to do with the program? We're rolling right out of PaizoCon Online into finalizing what year 2 looks like for Pathfinder Society and the launch. And, there's a lot of speculation, conversations about, well, is Gen Con happening? Is it not happening? Origins is already online. UK Games Expo had to cancel for this year. So when we see our opportunities dwindling in real space to get that feedback, it becomes doubly important in the online environment.
Zathos of Varissia says, sorry, they fell out of their chair when you sent a new website. More info, please. Please, pretty please.
We've updated the PaizoCon page, but the web team is actually working pretty hard you've seen some of the rolling changes come out, and they've got more plans. We've always got more planned. We've got so many plans, all the great plans. They're beautiful.
You say you've updated the PaizoCon site. I'm on it, and it's still just got unfortunately, we've had to cancel PaizoCon. So is that not something that's launched yet?
Nope, Friday.
Okay.
Friday. That will be part of the Friday information. We will have more coming out between now and the launch of PaizoCon as things keep getting finalized, and we can announce more and more and more.
So you've talked about it's been 8 weeks since you went to a con, and that obviously a lot of cons have canceled, but a lot of virtual cons have popped up in that time. Is there any of them that you are modeling PaizoCon after to give people an idea that if they went to that, it'll have a similar feel?
Any of the online cons that the online VOs have run. So TPK-Con was their latest that just finished up, so that's going to have a lot of the same online signups and feel, but it'll have the difference in that, we've got the streams and the staff pieces of it behind it. Yeah.
No, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, I unfortunately haven't really been to an online con. I hate to admit that. I need to get to one. But so much of my travel time is spent in the real space. I see them come up and I say, yes, we can give you support. And then it just kind of goes on. So a lot of this is other people giving me the best suggestions, and we're modeling it off of that. Just what they say goes well.
Now, that does bring up something that I'm sure our listeners might be curious about. The process of signing up for games, not just using Warhorn, like, is this going to cost money? What are they going to need to do?
It is absolutely free. We not charging anything for PaizoCon online. Very pleased to say that. So we're hoping that allows more people to get in. You know, there's the barrier of entry of internet and a computer already. We don't need to add too much more to that. They want to make sure they have a Discord account set up. They want to make sure that they sign up on Warhorn to jump into the games. And really, that's the best two things that they can do to prepare.
Now, I know on Discord, you can have different identities in different channels. So is there any guidelines for what you should be doing? Should people be using their real name at the PaizoCon Online Discord channel?
Whatever they would be known best as. So if you have a forum handle from Paizo.com that really stands out and people would say, oh yeah, I know you, you've posted over here 20 times. I'd say go ahead and feel free to use that. For the GMs, we're asking that they use their real names. If they've got an online moniker, we tend to have them put it in parentheses or in quotes so that you know this is your GM, because that way we can tag them all. The Paizo staffers will be in there, and then we've got all of the Discord role set up so that you'll be marked in as whether you're an author or a contributor or a staffer, a volunteer, HQ, if you're a GM, so that people can tell who's who.
Dr. Mono is pretty upset that it's not PaizoCon Line.
Oh,
you to explain yourself.
I missed the chance. That one actually hadn't occurred to me, so I'm sorry. My pun meter wasn't working on that one. We actually had a great debate between virtual PaizoCon and PaizoCon Online. But at the end of it, because we also now have PaizoCon Francia, we have PaizoCon UK, we have PaizoCon Asia Pacific, we felt that the PaizoCon Online would fit into that brand best. So we just kind of stuck with it. And then Sarah Robinson made a very awesome golem with the headset on, which just sold it for me. That was an excellent logo.
Now, if you are having a big success with this, is there any chance that in addition to normal PaizoCon Online happens again?
I think we need to get to the other side of PaizoCon Online before we have those discussions.
When's PaizoCon Online 2021?
Darren Caldemeyer, how many days is it?
Oh, he sent me that information earlier. It is 27 days until PaizoCon Online.
There we go. I do want to note that we are actually a little bit later than our normal weekend. This one, PaizoCon Online, starts the Tuesday after Memorial Day. So PaizoCon would normally be over the U.S. Memorial Day weekend, which I think was the 20th, 22nd. I actually don't have a calendar open, and I don't want to touch my computer so I don't break it again. But we'll be going from the Tuesday after Memorial Day all the way to the Sunday. So
yeah, so I'm curious about that because traditionally PaizoCon has been a 3-day con, then a 4-day con. It's now a 6-day con. Why the longer length of it?
We wanted to take advantage of the staff being in the office during the week to do their parts, and then to let the gaming go on the weekend when we felt more people might have some free time, because we know a lot of people are still trying to work. We also, unless you're a diehard stuck in your seat, can tune in for longer than 3 to 6 hours at a stretch, that made our days go very, very long. And so we didn't want to put that on anyone. We thought more bite size, stretch out a little longer might be better for this platform instead of, it's different when you're in a hotel room and you eat, sleep, breathe. Well, wait, you don't sleep. You eat and breathe PaizoCon, and it's everything all the time. It's a little bit different when you're sitting at home and you still have to take care of your own meals, and you have to make sure that, the dogs are walked and maybe the kids are fed and everything else that comes with being in your home environment.
Oh, Dr. Mono has another interesting question. If they are an author of a scenario, who should they contact about running it at PaizoCon Online?
PaizoCon Online at paizo.com, and we will get you spun into it so that we can get you signed up before to your tables.
Kitsune Warlock says, some of us have been practicing for years sitting in one place staring at screens.
I will admit I am weak. I need to get my endurance on that up a little bit.
Oh, the endurance run for the seminars, that's always a struggle, even though I'm super into it.
Yeah, you're just like I'm awake, really, I'm awake. Do you want dinner? No. Just leave me. Leave me in my corner.
Well, chair. You all got me a chair now.
See, we strive to help. So.
I'm looking at my list and I'm trying to think of anything that's part of the PaizoCon experience that we haven't asked about. Param, you've gone to a couple of PaizoCons. Is there anything that stands out to you as the thing that people don't talk about that makes PaizoCon awesome?
I mean, really the best part of PaizoCon is that you get to, not just the staff, but definitely when you do get to talk to the staff, you get to talk to you get these small group conversations where it is like a bunch of Uber fans and authors and people who made that really awesome character sheet you're using, and this guy has like the most awesome were-tiger mini I've ever seen that he hand sculpted out of an owlbear. Learning that you can just use the different colored things, just like these small group discussions that go on for hours and they're amazing. That's the part I'm going to miss most from PaizoCon Online, and I'm not sure how to replicate that.
Well, Tonya, on the PaizoCon Online Discord, there will definitely be places where we could be, type chatting, but will there be any voice chatting?
Yeah, we are actually setting up a couple of the voice chat channels, and we will have constant moderation on there, either between the HQ volunteers that have moderator access or between myself and the Organized Play Associate. Alex will be in there. So we could spin up one of those channels pretty quickly if someone pinged us and said, hey, we've got this thing going and it's really awesome and we just want to take it sideways. And we'll be like, yeah, give us, a couple minutes. We'll have something for you. Here you go. Have a room. Because we have not hit the limit of channels we can have in there yet. And we might find out what that is. But until we hit it, I'm happy to keep making more.
Chat, I'm going to encourage anyone that still has any questions to bring them in because we are coming up on our hour and we have covered a lot of ground very efficiently here. I am impressed.
We did. And then I will give a shout out. After PaizoCon Online, we are pivoting to look at Origins Online and what our presence will be there, but we will be having some games run at that environment as well. So if you get hooked into the VTT games, from this, I highly encourage you to continue following the online VOs as they move games just into the week. They have them running just about every night on some platform or another. And then come see us at Virtual Origins. And then we'll let you know from there what the next plan is. Because, by then we'll have figured out what August and September look like, hopefully. Knock on a lot of wood.
I mean, that's what I often advice I like to give a lot of the people who contact us and ask us about, hey, I really like Pathfinder. I'm in a new city. I don't have a game group. I can't get my old game group together. Just various reasons that they want to play Pathfinder and can't. With Organized Play Online, I'm almost always able to find a game whenever I want one. And that's so easy. Like that resource and the fact that you can play Pathfinder like in 2 hours, if you can find the right group for it, is awesome.
There's also a Discord that functions all the time, and it is the online play Discord. That there's constant games being picked up in there, and if you just hang out long enough and say, "Hey, I'm interested in the game," someone will come along and say, "Yeah, I've got 3 other people. Let's go make a table and have some fun." So we will get those links put in there as well.
Kitsune Warlock is asking if there will be Play-by-Post Lodge doing anything at PaizoCon Online.
There won't. We talked about it, but they just wrapped or are just wrapping the Play-by-Post convention that started a couple weeks ago. And we didn't think we could rush through one fast enough to get it done in the 6 days of PaizoCon Online. So we decided to use this one as VTT only.
Adam Daigle has a question. Aside from the org play stuff going on, the panels and the No Direction involvement, what other streamers are going to be what other streamers are going to be participating?
Oh, sorry. Okay, so we've got the PaizoCon or the Paizo streams. Amanda Hammond doing the Starfinder Extreme, and Jason doing his Band of Bravos. We also have Dragons and Things coming in to do a stream for us one evening. We've got Glass Cannon doing a stream one evening. We've got Roll for Combat doing some streams, and we've got Quidditch doing some streams. And there's still a few gaps that we're looking to fill. So That one is more on Peyton's scheduling tasks than mine. Peyton and Jim in marketing are taking care of that. But we are looking to have streamed games going on the Twitch channel pretty much all weekend, or all week and weekend.
And these will be announced.
Dungeon Novice is asking if Find the Path is doing something as well.
Yeah, Find the Path has got some. And this will be some of the announcements that are coming Friday is when you can find these games and tune into them and what the links are.
Debrick Wookie is asking if they already have a local group scheduled game set for that Saturday, the Saturday of PaizoCon Online. How can they roll it into the convention?
Email me. PaizoCon Online at paizo.com is the easiest way to open that discussion and see if there's any way we can accommodate that. I won't guarantee it, but we can always talk.
Well, Tonya, I think we could wrap things up, but there's actually a couple of news items that are organized play related. Do you mind if we switch gears and ask a couple of those questions while we give chat one last chance to add anything that they want answered related to PaizoCon Online? So the first question, that was a yes, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You've changed the limit of, the legal table size for Pathfinder Society 2nd edition is going from 7 down to 6. What happened there?
We found out that the balance in Pathfinder 2nd edition just kind of fell apart between 6 and 7, and it overpowered anything we could write. And if we wrote for a 7-player table, then we were killing characters that were sitting at a 3-player table. So we kind of went with what the middle ground was and just said no more 7-player. It's actually rolling out into Starfinder as well. With the launch of year 3, we're going to take it down to 6 because in the end, we thought the gaming experience more important than fitting that extra person, because if you have that extra person, someone you will usually step up GM and split the table. So in extreme circumstances, a 7th person can still be accommodated because I never want to turn anyone away. But the recommendation to the GMs and to the organizers is please plan for 6. Don't make 7 a default.
By extreme circumstances, you're talking about if it's a Starfinder wrestling game?
Possibly. I mean, or if people are going to get into thumb wars over who gets that final seat at the table. I'm not advocating violence. I'd rather do it. But really, it does break down both the math and the experience at the table.
I like that you call a thumb war advocating violence. I don't know how aggressive your thumb wars are.
I've got a 12, almost 13-year-old. They can get pretty aggressive.
Fair enough.
Did the extra difficulty running a 7-player table come into that decision? As a GM, I actually wince a little bit every time I have to do it.
It did, and part of the other decision was GMs don't like to say no. So when an organizer goes and says, will you run a 7th player? Yeah, the GM goes, fine. But it really does. It makes spotlighting players harder, and it makes that prep and what you think you're going to get a little bit harder. So we want everyone to be happy at the end of it and come away from it going, this is an awesome table, or we really enjoyed the experience, not, I don't think I'll try that again.
And another bit of news that you are related to is the Battle of the Pantheons. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about what you and Dustin Knight coordinated?
Oh, yes. The Battle of the Pantheon. Actually, that's a lot of Dustin's brainchild. I just said, yeah, I like that idea. We can make this happen. We're asking our community to submit their idea for a pantheon from the existing gods that were published in Gods and Magic. So there's rules in there for combining the gods together. We're asking them to think of groups that we might not have already put together and who you'd like to worship as a group instead of individually, and then submit them to us. One of them will become Pathfinder Society sanctioned and for use. That is the grand prize word. But you guys there at No Direction are helping out with the judging and the administration of the contest. And then we've got James Jacobs looking it over to make sure that it fits well into the world of Galarian, because we want to make sure everything is cohesive whole. But it's a 3-month process. The submissions are due May 10th, if my memory serves. And from there, we will start running it through different levels. The final judging, though, is going back to the community. So once No Direction judges have looked at it and Paizo staff have looked at it, then we are putting the top ones out to the community as a vote. So we'll put that up on the blog. I believe it's in May, right around PaizoCon time. We're going to get that one out there for everyone to see what the final choices were and to give us their input on it.
And for any listeners who are curious about what the Pantheons is, go back and listen to our Gods and Magic review. When we get to the Pantheons, it's like, wow, these are amazing. Why aren't there a million more of these?
Yeah,
so we're going to make a million more.
About Battle of Pantheons when we get to the news section. I just wanted to get your take on it, Tonya, because from the way Dustin talked about it, you two were just chatting one day, and all of a sudden we had a contest.
Yeah, he said, hey, I like people to bring me things and say, hey, I got an idea, and then I can riff a little bit and then go, let's go. That's how a lot of the collaboration on the OP team works, is one of us will come to the meeting with I had this just little thought, and that little thought then turns into some cool things. So I do want to give a shout out to the rest of the org play team. Without them, we wouldn't have a program. So our Pathfinder Society developer, Michael Sayer, Starfinder Society developer, Thurston Hillman, our Organized Play developer, James Case, the Organized Play Associate, the newest member, Alex Spidell, and then our Organized Play lead developer, Linda Zayas-Palmer. So really, that is the group that makes the magic appear for org play. I just get to sit back and make things happen and facilitate tasks around the office. So huge shout out to them to make org play what it is.
So we got two last questions from chat, and then we will wrap things up here. Zathos of Rissia wants to know anything on achievement points.
Read the blog tomorrow. That's the best thing I can say. Yeah, no, it's about the blog tomorrow, the Organized Play blog.
And Suitor79, will Wayfinder have a panel?
Wayfinder will actually have a launch party. So, yeah, we're working with Tim and to coordinate that one, but get some stuff up there. But that's the sneak peek. There will be a launch party for Wayfinder.
Do we know when?
Not quite
where
yet.
Can we find out more information?
Again, Friday, the schedule, the blog, more of our informational releases. We'll have that one. Him and I got so far as that seed of a plan going, hey, would you like to do this? Yeah, we could do it this way. But we haven't gotten quite to the implementation yet.
Excellent. Well, Tonya, this was absolutely fabulous. Thank you for joining us for this. This cleared up a lot. It's made me even more excited about PaizoCon Online. Actually, one of the first things that got me excited for PaizoCon Online was that shortly after it was announced, so many people were saying, I can finally make it to a PaizoCon.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm curious about this. Are you guys prepped for if this is like every Pathfinder fan ever, because they can all tune in and apply for games? And
what's capacity at PaizoCon Online?
I have no idea what to expect. The first day we had 282 registrations for GMs. If everyone read the announcement correctly and only the GM signed up at Warhorn, I'm sure a few players got in there, just didn't, they saw sign up at Warhorn and skipped the for GM's part. But I think it's going to be bigger than any of our physicals just due to people not having to travel. I hope we can support everyone in their games. We're going to do our best. It's an awesome team working on this, but in the end, I'm staring at a black hole and my magic 8-ball is not giving me a clear answer yet. It's still fuzzy.
Well, thank you for all the clear answers you've given us, because it really, more than anything from any of the announcements so far, this gives me an idea that this is going to be a PaizoCon, not just a virtual convention hosted by Paizo. So thank you for that. Thank you for joining us. And Param, I guess we'll be right back with the news segment, right?
Indeed. Right after this.
Bye.
Bye, Tonya.
Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news.
And we're back.
In the Pathfinder news segment, we talk about all the latest happenings for the Pathfinder role-playing game or of interest to Pathfinder players and Pathfinder enthusiasts. including third-party and licensee announcements and other announcements, including something we were just talking about with Tonya, and that is Battle of the Pantheons. So just to give a broad overview, this is an idea that Dustin Knight brought to us and that Tonya helped bring to you, the Paizo fans, the Pathfinder fans. You can add a Pantheon to Pathfinder canon, to Galarian lore, that if you have an idea for a bunch of gods that already exist, taking the existing gods who just hang out or have some reason to form a group and move together with a purpose and meet in whatever circumstance you can come up with, you can submit I believe it's a 150 word description of who this Pantheon is and what their purpose is, and emulate the rules that were introduced in Gods and Magic, like Perrin was talking about, or the blog post that Luis wrote in conjunction with Gods and Magic, introducing a few more Pantheons, because Pantheons are a really cool idea.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can worship a Pantheon, that could be your god of choice.
Yeah.
And like, that's a great option. And what's super exciting about this contest to me, and what makes me jealous of the people that are allowed to enter it, is that your Pantheon could win and be added as a Pathfinder Society legal option. You could play a character of, a gang of gods or a party of gods that you came up with and added to official Pathfinder lore. So it's a really fun, exciting contest. You don't have to be a great writer who could put out thousands of words. You need to be a tight, imaginative writer who could put out 150 words that completely sells why your idea of a Pantheon is awesome. And just a warning to anyone that's in chat, please don't, give actual ideas you plan on suggesting right now, because Param and I are some of the judges. Other judges include, I do have it open. Mm-hmm. So Dustin, Alex, I guess I'll give everybody's full name. So these are No Direction staff members: Dustin Knight, Alex Agunas, Owen Casey Stevens, myself, Param, and Vanessa Hoskins will be the judges. John Godak is the person who will be reviewing everything that was submitted to make sure it is valid, and then removing all the names before sending it to the judges, which is a very important part of a blind contest. Yeah. So it will be completely anonymous. People will not be able to bias the judges in their favor. Not that we would want to do that anyway. We are people of character, right, Param?
Indeed. I will absolutely not accept bribes in the form of chocolate.
That was weirdly specific.
I mean, it's useful to be accurate in what you're putting out into the world, right?
I guess.
And, oh, crap. I was going to do it.
You were going to do what?
I was going to say, speaking of chocolate, one of our shout-outs is to Critical Hit Cookies.
But we're not delicious. In shout-outs.
I know, but I thought about the cookies, and they are so delicious.
All right, we'll have to bring up Critical Hit Cookies again later.
Mm-hmm.
Dungeon Novice in chat is saying, Param's full name is Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Param.
I mean, it is.
Twilight Knight says, Param will accept the chocolate, but it won't affect the vote.
I mean, I'm not going to know who you are. I'm going to be staring at words. I'm going to be, that's the only thing. And unless you're Alex or Ryan or a few of the other people I do some proofreading for, I'm not going to be able to recognize it.
Anything exciting about Battle of the Pantheons for you that I haven't mentioned?
I mean, I just really want this concept to go out in the world, because they have been saying for years and years and years that your average citizen of Galarian doesn't worship a specific god, because the gods are important to so many different aspects of everyone's life. But yet, when we want to play a religious character, all the rules options have always stuck us down a very narrow path of one and done. And, that's not really a practicality. And there's been so much fiction based off this concept, and I mean whole mythologies based off of this concept, and I really wanted that to always happen, and we got a little bit of taste of it in 1E with the God Claw, but for the most part, this is the first time that's really going to be able to stretch its wings. You could totally do a Pantheon of nothing but people who have wings. That would probably not be a great one. And I just want there to be more of these. I want the community to understand how great they are, how influential they can be, and how this gives you so much more flexibility in a system that already has an incredible amount of flexibility to define exactly what your character is and how they aren't like every other cleric.
Yeah, so the deadline is May 10th, which is less than 2 weeks away. So we are not going to be able to shout out to this on the next episode. So if you are the kind of person that needs a last minute reminder, this is as last minute as we can get you, unless you follow us on social media, in which case I'll probably be posting some regular reminders in the next couple of days because I'm looking forward to reading these. I cannot wait for May 10th, May the 11th for these to arrive in my inbox and me to pour through them, because just it could be anything. Just the vastness of the creativity of the entire Paizo community is open to us right now. And that's really exciting to me.
Now, coming up...
Oh, go ahead.
I was saying, coming up next is a new pawn collection was announced that kind of confused me when I saw it. It is the new pawn collection, Pathfinder Player Character Pawns. Well, usually when we get a pawn set, it's for a specific adventure path or a specific monster collection, like Bestiary, Monster Codex, NPC Archive. And just a whole bunch of player characters is something that, you probably actually super duper want in your collection. I know that that's definitely a collection of my normal miniatures that is very large and always varied, because everybody always wants that one mini that represents their character as best they can, or to be inspired by a mini to make a really cool character. And it doesn't really work if you have the chance that your character is actually the third level boss of the next PFS session you're going to be in.
Oh yeah, I had a player using Karzug as their miniature, and it bugged me. And then the next adventure path we were running, we knew was going to be Rise of the Rune Lords. So around when that was decided, I hid my Karzug mini and didn't let them borrow it anymore.
Oh, so
it's Karzug. It's not just a pawn.
I know. And actually, I had a bad experience with this at Gen Con 3 years ago, when that rare time I got to actually play Pathfinder at a convention. And my Magus was getting his first time out, and I went through the dealer hall and found the old D&D minis from 5th edition Spellblade. So it's this really cool...
5th edition.
Or sorry, 4th edition. It's
okay.
A 4th edition mini. Which doesn't matter for minis, but it came out during the 4th edition era.
Just the timeline confused me. Yeah. Sorry.
So it's this really cool fighter that's got this big sword in one hand and clutching a spell tome in the other, and it sells the Magus ideal right there. And I was like, yes, they've got it. Here is your $35. Thank you for the mini. And sat down at my table, and the GM saw it and said, oh no, actually I'm using that as a bad guy. Can you use this bottle cap?
To which you said,
yes.
You use this bottle cap, sir.
No, to which madam. I said, yes, I will, because I have been in that chair 1,000 times before at Gen Con, and it is so stressful. And I'm not one that's going to give any convention GM any flack, at all, because, man, it is such a hard job.
That's good of you. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would have done the same in your shoes.
I mean, I still got a cool mini out of it, and I use it every time I get to play now.
But back to the Pathfinder player character pawn collection. The details about this are amazing. There's more than 200 pawns for use with 2nd edition or any tabletop fantasy RPG. And then I love this second paragraph that describes what the contents of those 200 pawns is. 1 pawn for every combination of ancestry and class from the core rulebook. Also supports the Advanced Player's Guide by having pawns of every new ancestry in that book, pawn for each archetype, as well as pawns for every combination of core rulebook ancestry and Advanced Player's Guide class. You'll also find a selection of ancestries for the Lost Omens character guide, as well as multiple familiars and animal companions. So yeah, when I first read it, I was like, okay, it's mostly going to be core rulebook. And then it's like, and then. And I love that you're going to get the weird combinations. You're going to get your goblin wizards. You're going to get your gnome barbarians, as well as classics like the elven and ranger and whatnot. So I want this pawn set just because I have now every NPC I could ever conceive of can be represented by a pawn. And you got to imagine most of this is going to be new art because they just don't have a lot of these combinations illustrated anywhere in their archive of art. So it's the pawn sets tend to be some of the more exciting things. The pawn sets that are not just the ones you were talking about. So the ones like the Pathfinder Society pawn set from first edition, those are the pawn sets that I get excited about just because of the potential, just because of what I could do with them as a GM.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about it that way. The rarity combinations being an incentive here. Yeah, that's going to make me. Well, I was going to get it anyway.
Next news item. Oh, we already talked about with Tonya that 7-person tables are no longer going to be Pathfinder Society legal. Just one thing I am going to read that we didn't talk about with Tonya is that it's as of June 1st, 7-person tables will not be legal. So if you have an event between now and June 1st and you were like, oh shoot, I was really banking on those 7-person tables, we don't recommend, or they are not recommended. As Tonya was just saying, those tables tend to break down almost immediately. But if that's absolutely the only way you can run them, there's some leeway, and especially up until June 1st, it is still technically a legal table.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, from the very first version of the very first Society Guide, it has always said, we do not recommend this. You should probably split into 2 tables. But if you can't, you can run 7.
Next news item, I was actually debating about whether this even qualified as a news item, but you know what? I think we can have a lively conversation about it. There are new Pathfinder and Starfinder licensed Q Workshop dice. And there's a couple of interesting things about them. So excuse me, Q Workshop has long been a licensee of Paizo's. They release a dice set themed to each adventure path that comes out. Yeah, that counts for both Pathfinder and Starfinder.
Yeah. They're the company that you often see at conventions where they have these really cool dice that have like really cool runic inscriptions and numbers that are made out of bones, and some of their dice are actually 3D, so like it's just like a whole bunch of leaves in a ball, and somehow the twigs on those leaves are the numbers that it rolls.
I was thinking, I thought they were all actually 3D, but now I see what you're saying.
Yeah, they're a lot of their line is basically just screen printed on the die, or I don't know how they do the printing, but it's just printed on the die.
So when I posted this to Facebook, a lot of people had an interesting conversation about, excuse me, about their experience with the Q Workshop dice and how a lot of the early ones, which are based on the early adventure paths, they are hard to read. The legibility was an issue, and that's kind of become a reputation that Q Workshop has for its dice. But then people that have experienced some of the later sets are trying to reassure people that is no longer the case. They took this to heart. They have modified how they design their dice. And as you can see from the dice sets that were just announced, so the Extinction Curse dice set, which we're going to talk about a couple of interesting things about that in a second, and the Attack of the Swarm and the Threefold Conspiracy, all of the previews are extremely clear. I can see exactly what is going on. So even though Attack of the Swarm, there is a bug theme to all of the numbers, I can tell exactly what numbers we are looking at, and each side has one die that is just a logo, and that is always going to be the highest number.
I've got some experience from both sides of the coin on this one. I went and got the Rise the Rune Lords dice when they came out, because I was running Rise the Rune Lords and totally wanted them. And on that particular set, they use the Rune Lord symbols for the max number on those dice, and because you usually want to be excited when you show somebody your logo. You don't want them to look at your logo and go, dang it.
I have so in the Least I Can Do card game that Blind Ferret produced, they decided to put Rain's face on the number 1 on the D6 because Rain's number 1, and it's like, oh, you guys made a mistake. I wasn't involved in that decision, but it's something that as soon as we started talking about other games and decisions, that's the kind of thing I was like, this is what you're actually doing by putting Rain on the lowest number of the die.
Yeah. So, but a lot of those rune symbols are really thin, squiggly lines that look a lot like a 1. And so it has made me make wrong calls on a roll before. It has slowed me down in the middle of an action-packed combat to see, is that Wrath or is that 3? And they were very, very dense. They look amazing sitting on your table, but they They definitely slow the play down. And as a GM, I kind of wince when a player pulls out a set of the older ones. They look beautiful, but I can't read them from 6 feet away. And the new Pathfinder, the ones they launched at last year's Gen Con, the new Pathfinder 2e official sets, there's the ones that are adopting, where they started adopting this new style. Very big numbers. There's a bunch of white space around the numbers. You can tell immediately what you roll. They're one of my favorite sets of dice to use.
Some people in that Facebook post were saying that they use those early Q Workshop dice as GMs so that they can fudge without having the GM screen in front of them. And just like, yeah, that's high enough or low enough or whatever whichever direction they're trying to fudge in.
Oh, goodness.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Looking at the Extinction Curse dice, this is the first time that they have 2 sets for a single adventure path. And the reason they did that is that it's 2 colors per set. Mm-hmm. So there's a teal with yellow and a red with yellow. And which dice are which color differs in the set. So if you get both sets, you would have a full red and a full teal set. But if you only get one of them, it'll be mixed, which I get what they're going for. They're going for like the top of a big hot tent.
Mm-hmm. It's also,
I don't think it's great.
It's also when they're probably using dice molds. They are almost definitely using dice molds. And dice molds aren't made to have different colored dice made. It makes all the dice at once when you pour in the plastic. So they were always going to have full 7 pieces red. And like, this is the only possible way that you can make these dice, is if you have some with the one color and some with the other. And it's kind of at least smart that they let you order specifically which variation you want, and they thought to organize it, because the alternative is what I've seen done before, which is they just randomize it. They don't remember which one is in which set, and then you end up with just like one pink D8 and a sea full of cool green ones.
Right. And, if you're a completionist, that is maddening.
Yeah. And the Q Workshop dice are a little on the expensive side compared to most plastic dice. These are plastic dice. But it's like $13 instead of $7. It's not $70 instead of $7 like some of the metal sets and gemstone sets can be. Though they do have metal and gemstone sets if you want to really, really... Like there's that $200 set for Pathfinder that's like steel and gold.
Do you have that set?
No.
I imagine you do.
No.
Really? Oh, wow.
No. Like, my completionist is the printed word of Pathfinder. When I do my collections, I have to very narrowly define it, because I had a friend in college who was also a collector of X-Men material, and we collected together, and I saw his face when, like, some soup bowl with Wolverine's face, and it's a bad print that they overuse, is on the back of it, and he's like, "God, I get it. It really sucks and it costs too much, but I've got to get it for completion's sake." And I'm like, no, I'm going to set the rules for my collection myself. But if they had an alternate cover, I would have to buy it.
What do you get out of it? What do you get out of having such a desire to have everything as long as it fits within a certain rules? Because like even my G.I. Joe collection is not complete. I've got 20 backstops just because I like backstop, but I don't have every edition of Ozone because I don't need 3 copies of Ozone. He's obscure to the point of being pointless.
Well, there's really 2 aspects to it. Actually 3. One is just the satisfaction of knowing that if I want to read anything about Pathfinder, I can just reach over here to my left-hand shelf and pull out the exact book I need. The collection is complete. I don't have to wonder if I have the book. I know I have the book. The other thing is that there is just sort of the, the Pavlovian reward of here's a part of the collection, here's a part of the collection. You're checking off the checklist. You're able to measure success and goals, and that's not a very great reason to do something, but it is definitely part of it. The base lizard brain satisfaction of doing a task and checking it off is part of it. And my absolute favorite part of it is the hunt for the hard to get ones. Like when I secured the Vampire Hunter D uh, Pathfinder First Edition supplement, that was a big high of managing to get that, because that is a very rare, very hard to get book that some people don't even know exists. Like Hollow's Last Hope, for a long time, a lot of people did not know there were printed versions of that because it was produced as a free RPG giveaway item before Pathfinder was even announced. And so, a lot of people threw that in the trash with a bunch of other stuff that got thrown in the trash.
So I did actually recently take a G.I. Joe related deep dive like this, where there's the hunt for second printing of G.I. Joe number 21, which is the most famous G.I. Joe comic. It's the silent issue. It's one of the most famous comics from the 80s. And some people realize that they've got somewhere, the legalese in the front of a comic says first printing, and they have them that says third printing, but no one has one that says second printing. And so someone was like, all right, so first printing came out this date, third printing came out this date. We know this because we have these. And so in the time in between, the Spider-Man in the bottom left corner should have been the black suit Spider-Man, because it came out, Marvel switched to the black suit version the month after the original first printing of G.I. Joe number 21 came out, which has the classic Spider-Man face on it. And like, they were just going through a whole bunch of little things that it's like, yes, these things are in every cover, but it's like, I never would have pieced together that those different changes happened at a certain time, and therefore that is your treasure map. So I do appreciate it as a third party looking in and being like, wow, those people really have very specific rules for how they can collect. But I don't tend to have those rules. I am very open with what I collect.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and also
I'm not judging. I'm interested.
Yeah. I
don't know. And that's why I ask.
And a real fun part of it is when you engage in the player versus player version of this game, which you do when you are managing said game store and you are buying a collection, and you have to see if it's counterfeit and what exact edition it is and how much it's actually worth in the condition that they brought it to you in. And that negotiation is also a good, fun game with real consequences that may include somebody losing a job if you mess it up.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, this keeps reminding me of more and more examples from the G.I. Joe community.
I mean, the G.I. Joe community is a fantastic collection community, and I got a taste. I got a good long taste because I bought a ton of G.I. Joes, and I've forgotten all their names since then, but like getting at one point in time, I had in my possession 5 USS flags of various states of completion.
Wow!
Including one in original box and complete.
When was this?
This is probably about 11 years ago, when I had all 5 of them.
Wow!
Like some of them were like real bare bones. Most of them were all right, had all the major pieces, but were missing like missiles and some of the antennas and some of the satellites. And then one was absolutely pristine, complete, and in the box. And I was like, I didn't know this was possible.
There's so yojo.com is an amazing resource for G.I. Joe collectors, and there's a great tool they have called Whobit, which stands for whose helmet or backpack is this?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so if you just have a random accessory, you use Whobit to figure out which figure it goes with, because a lot of those accessories were used over multiple figures, but sometimes specific colors were exclusive to specific things.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so fun. I remember one time we got in a He-Man mace. The mace was the wrong color, but it wasn't a reprint, and we ended up having to research it, and then we got to prove the existence of a print run of Beastman that nobody knew existed before.
Oh wow.
It was like a rumored print, and I was like, no, we've got it. We've got it here. And that was a really, really ridiculously fun moment.
So I've just been watching our audience numbers to make sure that people aren't dropping out because of this toy tangent. And nope, people are sticking with us, and chat's actually kind of lit up. So I guess people can relate to the collector side of it, even if they can't relate to specific examples of Beastman or why I got so excited when you said you had 5 USS flags. Where did you even keep them? Each one's the size of a coffee table.
I know. They took up like a humongous part of our basement storage. It was like basically there was a whole aisle in the basement that was USS flags with tubs of loose Joe weapons stacked on top of them.
Wow.
Also, Terradromes. We had so many Terradromes. We of course we had the jets to go with the flags. We had all the bases. G.I. Joe is such a fun thing to collect because of how cool it is and how well documented it is. When you go to collect some toy lines, it's not very well documented, especially if it's from like the 70s and 80s before people thought documenting these things was a good idea. And you run into situations where you're trying to prove a Beastman exists, or did Snake Eyes ever come with this lighter gray briefcase? You know, it's all sorts of fun things like that.
Daigle is taken off. He's just letting us know in chat. So bye, Daigle. Thank you. He gave us a shout out earlier because of the critical hit cookies. We'll get into that, I guess, a little later.
Yep. You know,
I do.
The next news item ties into my banter topic to this episode. And it is an unfortunate and also fortunate news announcement. ReaperCon, which was going to take place in September, will no longer take place and at their physical facilities in Texas.
Denton, Texas, I believe.
In Denton, Texas. I have always wanted to go to a ReaperCon. I am a massive fan of Reaper miniatures, the company's attitudes. I love watching their streams. Their painting advice is awesome. I swear by their paint over all other paints. And actually, that was what first got me addicted to Reaper, is these paints are better than anybody else's paints. Those are fighting words in the miniature painting community, by the way. So I have to be careful how strongly I say that in mixed company. And then they were like, before Reaper, I was a massive Ralpartha fan, but this is back when I was a little baby RPGer and living in Eastern Kentucky, where you couldn't get things like cool freaking miniatures, and also Eastern Kentucky is a poverty-stricken area. I didn't have a ton of money, so the amount of days me and my younger sibling would just hold a Ralpartha catalog and flip through it, marveling at the pictures of the miniatures and then coming up with campaign ideas based off what they looked like. That catalog was so important to us, even though we could not afford to ever buy those minis. I think we only ever ordered a few before Ralpartha went bankrupt. And even those were treasured. And then when Reaper stepped into the field and they had that catalog, I was like, oh my gosh, you are everything I ever wanted. And since that day, I have been a very, very loyal customer. But that might change soon, but not at Reaper's fault. Again, I'm going to get into that in the next topic. Reaper's still awesome. Their paints are amazing. And Bones Black is wonderful. I love the new Bones Black. Have you messed with Bones Black?
I don't think so.
Yeah. But in the place...
Bones Black are the miniatures. For some reason, I was thinking you were talking about the paints.
No,
yeah. I've definitely not messed with Bones Black.
So remember how when we reviewed the Bones when they first came out, especially because we had the Pathfinder models and I had the physical versions to compare them side by side, and they said there would be a loss of detail in the Bones White, and there was a significantly higher loss of detail than I expected, even though Bones are still very good, cheap miniatures. Like, you get a mini for $1. At the time that was happening, minis were $6 for metal cast ones. And the Bones Black solves the sharpness issue. It's a harder plastic. They do not bend like the Bones do. And because of that, you very rarely get a Bones Black one that has droopy sword syndrome. And the detail is there. They're super crisp. And they are heavy. This is a dense miniature. And it's called Bones Black because the plastic is this really, really, really dark gray. But I guess Bones really, really, really dark gray wasn't great with the marketing team. And they also paint like a dream. I bought 5 of the owlbears when it was the first Bones Black figure to be released. and it's just this fantastic owlbear pose, and it paints real good. Like, the details are super sharp. Everything I had to complain about Bones was fixed with Bones Black, and the price tag didn't go up. But that's a big tangent to say that even though ReaperCon 2020 is canceled, they too are doing an online convention. ReaperCon Live is what they're calling it. It'll take place September 3rd through 6th. And here's the cool thing about ReaperCon is that we're seeing a lot of what a online gaming convention can be, and we're getting better at them, and we're learning as we've been forced to do this. And we hope that PaizoCon Online is going to be an amazing experience for everyone who participates. Reaper's Con is going to be unique in that they are also going to have, as a major focus of their convention, painting classes, because their convention always has a bunch of painting classes. They have some of the best miniature painters in the entire world at their headquarters. And because of that, their classes are super awesome, and they sell out immediately. So you will be able to watch all the classes, all the seminars completely free. They're not going to put a charge on this. And for the painting classes, they are also going to advance sell the kits that they would give you if you showed up in person. I mean, if you have this material, obviously you won't need to buy the kit. But, you know, if you want to do exactly the experience that you would have had in the class, where you have the same miniature that the teacher's using with the exact same paints and the exact same brush, they're going to be selling kits ahead of time so that you're ready to go. And they also are going to, the swag bags and the VIP bags they put together, they're going to provide on the website for people to pay to purchase those and have them shipped to them. If you want those swag bags that they were going to make. And ReaperCon always had like amazing swag bags just stuffed with miniatures and paints.
Yeah, the class kits actually, it reminds me of that shout out I gave to Boss Fight Studios, where they were doing this as an alternate way of, just having income while the income stream was a little tighter. But it wasn't tied into a convention. The idea that this is the ReaperCon experience just from home. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I am going to ask for those days off work. I'm going to just get into my game room here, turn on this overhead light so I see, get my painting materials out, and just have 3 to 4 whole days of making my hands purple and polka dotted.
Yeah, so it's September 3rd to 6th, which is a Thursday to a Sunday.
Now, I have been humongously deep diving into miniatures lately, and I've talked about it a little bit on the show. So Ryan, I'm gonna have to ask you to make sure we help me make sure that this discussion is in new territory.
All right.
So, or at least the recaps are recaps and not tangents. So I've been, of course, 3D printing minis, and I have much success to report on this, because now my collection of 3D printing minis is up to like 400 plus minis that I've produced now out of that printer. Since I've owned it, I've gone through 3 bottles of resin to produce those 400 minis. I accidentally ordered way too much resin, and now I have a giant stack of it waiting for me. That was not intentional. I wanted to order some more resin. Well, I'm set for a while. But actually, resin expires, so I actually have to use it all. So I'm going to be printing about as much as I was before. It's not going to expire that quickly. I just won't have to order for a while. And I've noticed a few things about resin printing that has changed my behavior having access to this. Because I can basically print any miniature I want within 3 hours in mass quantities. I was able to, for instance, part 2 of Age of Ashes, a tiny bit of spoiler, takes place in Mwangi. And Mwangi monsters and characters are not something that are very common in your typical fantasy miniature collection. But hey, if I need to have Cheracaws and frog people, there is tons of Cheracaws and frog people. I was able to print out the encounters for those Age of Ashes that I would have just had to do my level best to improvise or find something that was kind of like before. I think I was using half orcs to play the Cherokos. No, I was using hobgoblins to play the Cherokos, and that's problematic. But they were the closest thing I had to bright orange with big weapons and taller than the frog people. But now I have really cool frog people. Actually, really adorable frog people to the extent that my players don't want to hurt them.
Psychological warfare.
Which actually works, but I don't want to get into spoilers. Next, and when I went back to my normal habits, and I started trying to find something because Amazon is not reliable. So I wanted to get a new wet palette. I wanted a smaller one that closed up. Army Painter just put out this really cool wet palette that's good quality, a lot better than my made up one with Tupperware and sponges. And for those
I know we've talked about the advantages of wet palettes, but remind people why they might want one.
If you are using a water-based paint, and most miniature paints that are sold for gaming are water-based acrylics, so do pay attention to which is what. You can get something called a wet palette, which is basically a layer of parchment paper on a sponge that is absolutely fully moisturized, not completely soaking wet, but the sponge is full, and that makes the paper on it slightly wet, or actually completely wet, but it's not like you don't have puddles. And the idea is you put your paint on that while you're painting. It will keep the paint the same consistency that you put it on there as. If you thin it down, it'll stay thin. If you pull it out of the bottle, that's how it stays. It will automatically thin it just a tiny bit, but not enough to really make a huge difference from filling the bottle. But if you thin it in advance, then it's going to stay at that consistency. It makes it very easy to blend the colors. It also means that while you're painting with that paint, it doesn't dry out on you. If you are painting on a styrofoam plate or a plastic paint palette, especially with certain colors like grays, metallics, browns, that paint dries really fast, and often by the time you're done painting a mini, the consistency of that paint, if you hadn't been watering it the entire time, is drastically different than when you started it, which can lead to clumping and mistakes. With a wet palette, you always have the best perfect consistency of the paint, and I have loaded that wet palette up a week ago with my paint. I was able to sit down yesterday and use it to paint a mini with the same colors that I painted his sister minis that I had to produce for an army. It's this one right here. This is one of the ones that broke. But it's got like this cool teal outfit and this brown I mixed. And actually I had enough foresight to put that in its own bottle, so I would have much more of this when I needed it. But because I put it on my wet palette, I actually had some of the original ready to go again. And I've heard tell of if it's got a good enough seal, it can last like, a couple of weeks without the paint going bad. The only disadvantage to a wet palette is don't use it with metallics. If you use it with metallics, the mica dust that gives the metallics gets into the water, distributes throughout the entire water, and it basically makes every paint you use on that wet palette until you clean it out a metallic. But that made some really awesome purple robes, purple metallic robes for a palette that I was painting. It was a complete accident, but man, it looked awesome. Cool. And getting into painting and prepping minis. Oh, going back to the other point first. I went shopping for that wet palette. And I went to Miniature Market, which is a online web store of some fame. Because right now, ordering from the generic stores like Amazon or Walmart here down in the States is not a great plan if you want to get something quickly. They're prioritizing much more important things for people, like basic necessities, PPE, the things people actually need to live and not get sick and, survive this thing. So to do that, my wet palette was very low on that priority. But if you order, the trick I learned very quickly was if you order from specialty shops online, they send that stuff out immediately. Because if you're a gaming store right now, all the business you can get is business to keep you alive. So ordering a wet palette from Miniature Market, man, they had that thing to me like in 2 days. And great on them, great on them. But I saw they were having this amazing sale, and I looked down at the sale, and they were blowing out a lot of their conquest models, which had these wolfmen, like really awesome wolfmen that would be fantastic werewolf models. And they were huge and dynamically posed and ready to go. And it was all for $1.77.
Wow.
And I put that in my cart. I put 3 of them in my cart because, man, a lot of really awesome wolfmen, right? And then I took them out of my cart. It's like, I can have wolfmen tomorrow. I can have really awesome wolfmen. I know where to get really awesome wolfmen tonight. I could wake up to 12 of these amazing wolfmen, and it will cost me all of 80 cents. So I do think that this technology is changing. It's going to just change the game as it gets easier and easier and easier. And if you don't have a printer, the odds are somebody in your geeky circle, a geeky circle you have to have if you're involved in our hobby, because it is one of the most fun, nerdy games in the world that requires friends. Somebody in that group will probably have a printer, and I know many gaming groups that have formed the same pact that I have, that my gaming group gets all the minis they want if they provide the materials. So you will have access to cheap minis. Everybody will. And I think that this is going to extremely change how the market for miniatures and our hobby is done. We actually, Westphalia, which is a big miniature producer over in Europe, has started Westphalia 3D. And these are old school, like Napoleon and knights and hobbits that look like hobbits, and they call them hobbits in miniatures, you know? They're starting Westphalia 3D, where they're going to be selling their models digital files instead of, well, in addition to selling physical versions of these. And I think that that's going to be super important. Also, having 400 unpainted minis has made me research all sorts of painting techniques to the point that I got to making my own paints.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so I can't take credit for this. There's a really amazing video put out by a channel called Goobertown about what they call making your own contrast paints. That is not the important part of that video. If you want to make your own contrast paints, they tell you how. It's a fantastic video for that. And for those of you who do not know what a contrast paint is, GW has basically released a line of very heavy washes or very heavy glazes that have good adherence. When you paint them over a white model or a gray model or a model with a zenithal highlight, it takes care of your wash and your shade at the same time. And to some extent, even your highlights. Now, it will only do height-based highlighting. So if you want like actual, light source highlighting, you'll have to come in and do it yourself. But if you want to paint up a mini in minutes, that would take hours. This is amazing stuff using that technique. But the problem with contrast paints is Games Workshop is the one marketing this. And that means that they're, for a tiny little paint bottle, they're $8 a piece.
Yeah, last time I went to a Games Workshop store, I bought a couple of brushes, a couple of paints. It cost me something like $20, and I was like, oh, I guess prices have gone up, which is to be expected. But no, it ends up it was just that one contrast paint that I bought was the majority of my costs.
Yeah, and it's great stuff. Like, it really is great stuff. The GW branded stuff is amazing paint for what it is. Use it for that technique. You will be happy with the results more than likely, unless you bought ultramarine blue, which for some reason the formula they used for that is not that good. And it comes out streaky and clumpy. But for the blacks and their white especially, amazing stuff. But that's not why I want to bring our listeners' attention to it. You can make this sort of paint yourself using pigments and artist inks and mediums. By watching the video, he gives you the recipe for that. But watching that video is actually a video about how paints are made and how paints can be customized to give qualities you want. and to the extent that these are not his recipe. Because I learned so much about how the paints were made, which is you have a pigment suspended in a medium with a flow improver. That's basically every paint. You just, whichever ingredients you have, give it different properties, and the proportions of each ingredient gives it different properties of how the paint will behave on your mini. Like a wash is just a paint that has a whole lot more suspension medium than it has pigment. And it has a whole lot of flow so that it will wash over a mini and only settle in the crevices. That's what a wash is. A glaze is a thickened up wash. And of course, most acrylic paints are nice and creamy. And when you use them, they're about the consistency of skim milk, is the exact right consistency you want when you want to put down smooth base coats. But understanding that and going through that 16-minute video where he talks about how all of this is done, what each of these chemicals do when you add them together to the paints, what alternates you can do, it basically teaches you how to make your own paints exactly how you want them. So I like contrast paints, but for me, they're still a little bit too wild. Like they're still a little bit too loose. So when I mixed up my batch, it is much more adhesive than theirs because I know my paint style. So these are perfect paints for me, not anybody else. I can't say, somebody else might like this paint if they used it, but I know it's the perfect paint for me because I very carefully made it exactly how I wanted it, as thick as I wanted it, as adhesive as I wanted it, with the right amount of flow in it that I wanted it. And it meant that I was able to paint a whole bunch of little army dudes, soldiers, Lancer soldiers for my Kings of War, and a whole bunch of D&D miniatures super fast and with colors that you don't see often in your average paint line. Like I really love these teal and leather and gold soldiers. That's the theme for my League of Rordia game for Kings of War. And I mean, that's it. Do you have any questions on that? I kind of talked myself out of breath.
Well, it's just kind of a fascinating thing to watch you become this like Renaissance man of miniature painting, and like you're printing your own miniatures, you are designing your own miniature sculpts, or you're customizing them digitally before printing them, so that you've got a mass-produced army, but everyone's slightly different because you know how to tweak them. You're making your own paint so that it's got your own paint job. Like that one miniature is so you. Which is not something I cannot claim ownership over anything in my collection unless I spent hours and days drilling it down into something that is just not at all what it was originally, which I don't think I can say is any of the things in my collection. So it's just fascinating to see you becoming this just one person workshop for making exactly what you want out of your miniatures.
Yeah. And it's really satisfying to have a want and know what you need out of this. And instead of hoping that somebody else does it or paying for somebody else to give you what you want, you do it. And it's not that hard. I won't say it's easy. I've definitely spent a lot of hours watching a lot of tutorials, reading a lot of books, taking a lot of classes lately on how to do all this stuff. But it's not impossible hard. And I think that if a dedicated hobbyist really wants to do this and is willing to put in the time, any of our listeners could learn to make their own paints if that's something they wanted to do, or learn Blender and how to, make your own sculpted miniatures. And kit bashing minis, I don't know if I talked about much of that on the podcast, but that's been really awesome between custom sculpting. I haven't sculpted my own miniature from scratch yet, but I have kit bashed a bunch of minis. So like I wanted these Badger Rider dwarves for my dad's army that he was going to play in this war game with us. And I wanted also the perfect Param miniature that looked exactly like his artwork, which, I'm not going to find a miniature that looks exactly like a piece of artwork I had commissioned from Hugo Solis 8 years ago. So I was able to, bring in a Hero Lab version of that character that I could get very close and resculpt his face by overlaying a picture of his actual painting, and like actually pulling the nose down and pulling it out, the nostrils out, and getting everything exactly where it needs to be. And then this is my Param Halfling Wizard miniature. It looks exactly like his drawing. And that's something you can't do with any software. No matter how good Hero Forge gets, it's never going to be that good. And it only took me a couple of days worth of classes to learn that little bit. And then rigging him up so that he will dance to music, because I simply wanted to know, could I move the arms of these soldiers so that I only had to buy the Hero Forge miniature once instead of 7 times to get 7 different poses so they would look good in a group. The answer to that was yes. I had them dancing to J-pop music. And since then, I've actually started like taking pieces of different minis and taking like just weapons and really cool things that you can find online. And then when I wasn't able to find things that were good matches, I started just making parts from scratch. I need this really cool dagger. I need the halberd to look kind of like this. I'm going to make it completely from scratch and then add it to the miniature. And then 3 hours later, I'm holding it in my hand. These dwarf badger riders, perfect example. There are no rideable badger miniatures on the internet right now. I needed them. Actually, I think there was one, but it was like super, super, super low quality because it was made years ago when printers couldn't handle detail. So you intentionally made them with a little less detail.
That's why there was no Badger Rider boom.
Yeah.
Until now.
Yeah. So I took some bears and then turned them into badgers by resculpting them. Made them shorter, stumpied up their legs, pulled out the tail, made it look like a badger tail, made the face all pointy, and like I pulled up pictures of badgers. And then I took pictures of what badgers looked like running so that I could pose the legs in convincing parts of, in convincing poses so that it would look more natural. And then
so it's details like that I think are also separating you. Cause like the internet is a wonderful tool for learning. People can go to Instructables or YouTube and find a billion things they can learn and teach themselves. But it's that eye for detail where you're seeking out actual badgers to figure out what the motion should look like. I think that's what separates you from someone else picking up the skill.
I mean, it's something anybody can do, though.
But you have the intuition to do it.
Yeah. And it's really fun. And for instance, to continue, I had these dwarves that were really cool dwarf-looking berserkers because I wanted that troll slayer look that I've got a loincloth and 2 axes and a mohawk and I'm ready to just destroy everything. I wanted that aspect of the dwarves represented. And I ran into 2 difficulties. First was none of these were ready to be mounted on anything. They didn't have mounted poses. So I had to repose them, but some of them were, but because these dwarves often evoke this energy and movement, people really love to pose these sorts of barbarian dwarves in like humongously dynamic poses, which makes like the arm stick to the side and the leg and the pants not in a neutral state. That makes it easy for posing. So when I reposed these dwarves, I have this really cool one that's like a big fat dwarf, and he had this big skirt on, and he was like mid jump off a rock in his original pose. So when I reposed him, it's like that doesn't even look like a thigh anymore. So I had to remake his thigh from scratch and fix his robes and pull it down. And I kicked out his feet like he's riding these badgers, and then I noticed the feet were flat. Because he was
unacceptable.
He was made to sit on the base. And then the second I saw that, I'm going to be like, oh, that gives the game away. If you look at that, you know that it was a miniature that I hacked together. This is the flat foot. You knew that was meant to go on the base. So I cut his feet off, made new feet from scratch, put them back on the mini. And another one I could not save his legs. His pose was just so dynamic that there was not enough of the original material there. So I cut him in half at the waist, pulled some other dwarf berserker's legs off and glued them together. But the seam wouldn't quite line up. So I started making pouches and daggers and cool stuff to hang from his belt to hide all the places I goofed up on my sculpting. And then I had to fix his feet because I had to fix all their feet because they were all standing miniatures, and all standing miniatures have flat feet, so they'll stick to the base. And then I had
now you're saying you cut and glued, but this is still all in the 3D program,
yeah,
right?
It's all 3D. Like I use software to separate the 3D mesh along his waist, and then I merged it with the 3D mesh of another model that I took the feet off of. And then I made custom meshes by sketching out the shapes of daggers and then going in with clay tools and smoothing them out and making them sharp and making them more organic, and then just merging it with my one to hide the areas where the seam was too obvious and I couldn't mask it away. Like, my sculpting skills were not at the point that I could make that merge seem transitionless, so instead I did 90s Batman to him and loaded his belt up with stuff.
And what's interesting, though, is that you're using terminology, the same terminology for if you were modifying a physical miniature as you are a digital one. Mm-hmm. And I think that just shows how much crossover there is between what you're doing and what modelers and painters do.
It's the same stuff. It's the same ideas. It's just that the digital tools lets me do it without there being the evidence left behind that I did it. People can notice the green stuff. People notice that the artwork is slightly different between these two things. And all the tools in these things are called things like clay, pinch, carve. The same thing. Like all the tools I use in Blender for the sculpting is named after a physical tool that a clay sculptor would use to achieve the same result. And also beyond that, 3D sculpting has taken a big leap. It's one of the few things in VR that is just amazing that can't be replicated in 2D. I can go into virtual reality in my Oculus, and I have infinitely more control and precision over what I'm doing. So I'm standing in a virtual space, grabbing a dwarf head and bringing it down and getting in there to do his teeth. And I need to get the backside of his teeth. And this is tiny detail work. So I pull him open and I pull it so I'm in his mouth, and I turn his mouth around and I'm inside his mouth adjusting his teeth and getting the right shape I need. And then when I need to take a look at him from a thing, I shrink him all the way down to inside the palm of my hands. And I'm doing all this with my hands. I'm making these motions because they're the exact motions I'm making in 3D because they mapped it 1-to-1 with physical movement. So I'm as accurate as I would be if I had actual clay in my hands. And better because I can't make clay infinitely bigger or smaller or appear exactly where I need it like I can when I'm working in 3D.
Now, a couple of things. Big Norse Wolf is wondering what program that is, and we'll get to that in a second. Dungeon Novice is asking, have you considered selling the files you're making? And I think one of the reasons you can't do that is because you aren't starting from a scratch point, right? You are starting from an existing model that you got and are modifying.
Right. A lot of my models are like that. I have now started doing things completely from scratch that aren't models. I'm not there yet. But for instance, Kings of War is a game that lets me use any miniature. I don't have to use official miniatures. I have 5,000 Dungeons & Dragons miniatures sitting over there. I want to use them. Do you blame me?
Do you have the Froghemoth?
I have the Froghemoth.
Can the Froghemoth be your general?
He can be the Beast of Nature.
All right, I'm on board.
And it makes sense because the Beast of Nature has flying, which they give to units that have leaps that are huge. The Froghemoth has a leap that's huge. Of course he has flying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It'd be perfect. But the problem is Kings of War was designed to support miniatures from old Warhammer and old War games, which were on 20mm square bases. We now use 25mm round bases. Your WizKids are released like that. Your D&D miniatures are released like that. And base size matters. So I made converter trays that were the exact tray as the units needed to be, and that you just slide the mini into the slot. And it just makes so I can just take any D&D mini and use it in this game, completely tournament legal. I even put magnet holes inside the base that were the exact size of some magnets I was able to order from China and embed into the holes and glue on the mini so they stick together. And it's so fun. It's just so fun to have a problem, know the solution, make the solution, hold it in your hands, and this all happens within a half day's time. In fact, right now I'm working on a file in Blender that takes when I want little solo heroes running across the field, I can't put them on a big base in numbers because I have to make the base smaller than the actual mini. So I ended up making a little pedestal that is at the bottom of it the right size, so we can do all the measurement from the small base. It rises up, it scoops out, and holds the mini in place, has that magnetic base, and a place to put weights in it so it stays balanced and doesn't become like how you broke your $20 metal Reaper figure.
Yeah, there was definitely a time when I was deeper into miniatures and magnet customization was the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And I never reached it. I saw Lauren in our painting channel on the No Direction Discord was talking about how she started to do magnet work too. And like, I'm jealous of her for that because that's a very specific dream I did once have and never achieved. But all the other stuff you're saying is so beyond the scope of things I imagined I would ever be able to do that I can't even afford to be. I can't even be jealous of it because I never even thought about myself in that position.
And also, the really cool thing is, besides the Oculus aspect of this, Blender is open source free software. Any of our listeners can go download it right now. There's tons of YouTube videos that'll teach you how to use it. Like, it is some work. This is some professional grade software that's open source, so that makes it extra convoluted. And Mixamo is a good way to very quickly rig things. I wish I just kept using that, but ended up I learned how to rig myself, and so like I don't even use the cheat anymore. I just do everything manually. And Mesh Mixer is a way to do this without having to learn all that. If you just want to put this weapon on this arm in this guy's hand, or you want to take her left arm because it's in a better pose than this other female miniature, and cut her arm off and glue on these other. Mesh Mixer is a super friendly software that is completely free that lets you do things like that.
Very cool. I think we did a good, significant deep dive to this. I know we teased it last episode, and I'm glad that the interview actually ended early enough that we were able to do a really good just analysis of what you're doing and why you're doing it and how it's working for you.
Yeah. And if any of our listeners have any questions, reach out to me on Discord. I'll be more than happy to chat with you. If you've got suggestions, I'm extra happy to chat with you. I want to keep learning how to do this stuff better. That's why.
And on that note, we will be right. Oh, God. What are we looking at? You're lifting up. Oh, the Cintiq.
Yes. So I can be better at 3Ding.
Dungeon Novice just screamed, more geeks together. More geek togethers. All right. Well, so
we
we'll talk about that
have a podcast every day of the work week.
No, well, sort of. We have the recordings on Wednesday that releases on Thursday, but that's the one gap in our schedule.
But then something comes out on Thursday.
Yes, the thing we recorded on Wednesday.
Oh, I thought that we had even something else. Sorry.
All right. We will be right back to wrap things up right after this.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups. Wrap-ups and shout-outs.
And we're back.
Thank you for joining us for episode 227 of No Direction, the No Direction Network's Pathfinder News, Reviews, and Interviews podcast. Before we go, a couple of things of interest to us that we think may be of interest to you that we'd like to give a shout out to. The first thing I want to do is actually shout out to Dustin Knight, who was in our Discord all night. And at one point, we were getting questions so fast that I was not able to keep up with them. And so I quickly gave him a Discord message, like, just send me all the questions you see because I am missing some. And so all night he's been feeding me the questions from chat for whenever I was, engrossed in the conversation with Tonya, which was this amazing conversation. Mm-hmm. So also a shout out to Tonya for coming on with actually fairly short notice, shorter notice than most of our guests because PaizoCon Online was only announced on Monday. And so we brought her on really quickly. So also shout out to Aaron, who works at Paizo and helped make that happen because we had a very different plan for this episode up until mid-Monday or even late Monday. Yeah. And we shifted gears and we ended up with something I think was really cool. This was a very memorable interview segment and really informative on what's going on with PaizoCon Online.
Yeah. For those of you who may not know, we normally schedule our guests like weeks or months in advance because we plan out what we're doing. and know mostly ahead of time who we need to talk to, and they help us with that. Uh, this was kind of ridiculous. I expected them to tell us no. It was really, really, really a lot to have her drop everything and appear on the show with that short
Yeah.
notice.
People who noticed the event on the No Direction podcast.com saw that it was just guest to be determined. And I said that with no confidence we would have a guest. I thought we might just have to collect all the information we've seen online, which was basically one blog post, and review what's going on with PaizoCon.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily, none of that happened. The best case scenario happened, and
Yep.
Tonya was an amazing guest to have on this.
We actually didn't say it too clearly, but Katie is involved with PaizoCon.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why don't you sum up what's going on with Katie and PaizoCon?
I don't want to say too much because I don't know what we're allowed to say, but our fans of what we have done in the past will be very happy with PaizoCon Online.
Yes, and I believe that Friday blog post that's been alluded to a couple of times, that is where more information is going to come out.
Right. We're going to hear a lot about all the people and companies that are participating in this and all the games and the actual stuff you need to know to have a great time. We are going to be very busy. We're going to be very, very, very busy.
Going to my regular shout out of the next podcast that's on my list. It's Hollywood Babylon, which is one of the most famous podcasts in the world. So I don't even know if I should be shouting out to it, but I am, because I am a Kevin Smith fan, and including the entire roller coaster that is involved in that. And Kevin Smith's show Hollywood Babylon with Ralph Garman, which is at times a weekly show where they just talk about Hollywood news and have a lot of fun and interact with the live audience. It's a good time, but recently, and actually this shout out, the timing worked out pretty well, because recently they've been doing isolation podcasts, which means they are doing a lot more content than they've been doing recently, because Kevin Smith has been on tours with the Jay and Silent Bob reboot. And they're being really candid. So these are two internet personalities that you come to know for one type of humor, which usually has a fair amount of candor. I do really feel like Kevin Smith is a fairly sincere person, and the person we see on these podcasts is very similar to the person that he is in real life. But these particular episodes have been especially honest and open and insightful, and just every now and then they are expressing their frustration with the situation that they and we are all in. And it's comforting. It's been comforting, which is what Hollywood Babylon is not usually known for.
I haven't listened to this. I need to go listen to it.
Yeah. What is your take, your history with Kevin Smith?
I've always been a fan of Kevin Smith's work since Chasing Amy and Mallrats. I'm not as into a lot of the cultures that he is often associated with. I can't play hockey to save my life. I have very little, and that means zero, interest in hallucinogens, but I have appreciated his candid humor and how he was doing a style of movie and comedy and work that just was not done at the time. I read his biography, his autobiography. I've watched most of the things he's in. I am surprised I haven't also listened to every episode of this. I just didn't know it existed.
Really?
Yeah.
But you know about the Smodcast podcast network, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Hollywood Babylon is my favorite one on that. And the only one that survived as more and more shows started coming out and being of interest to me. That was the one that I was like, no, this really is my favorite show, even though it's not their flagship. I have a funny thing with Kevin Smith where he is the only director I can think of where I have seen every one of their movies in order.
Oh,
Like by accident. Like I watched Clerks before Mallrats had ever even come out because it was available at my college library, and I saw somebody else watching it one time and it intrigued me. And then Mallrats just happened to be at a video rental store that I was at with some friends when we were just visiting them in another city, and it was like, hey, that's Jay and Silent Bob from that other movie. We should rent this. And so just as the movies came out, around Chasing Amy is when I became aware of Kevin Smith as the person behind these movies. And that's also around when I saw him live at a con for the first time. And so from Clerks to Red State, I saw those movies released in order. And I haven't seen post Red State. So I haven't seen Tusk or Yoga Hosers or Jay and Silent Bob Reboot. And I kind of don't want to watch the Jay and Silent Bob Reboot until I've seen Tusk and Yoga Hosers, even though I have no interest in Tusk. Tusk is just weird.
Yeah, he definitely entered that stage of his career that a lot of directors do when they've got enough success and that they can just start doing weird passion projects. And occasionally that means it's about tusks coming out of some guy's mouth and body horror.
Yeah, but it's like Kevin Smith's always been a guy who can just do his own thing. Like there's very few things that he's done on, if you look at his filmography, there's very few things you look at and be like, okay, he was pressured into doing that, or he didn't get to do that his way.
I just know that like a lot of artists, even artists like that, they still have to choose work they know will appeal to at least some amount of the audience. Like you see a lot of this in queer culture and art. The version of queer culture and art that is shown in mainstream movies and specials and that gets seen a lot is something that is intentionally sanitized, and like all the rough edges are smoothed off, and they put rubber on the corners so that you won't bang your head on it. Basically, it's queer art made for a straight audience, and then when you see queer art made for queer audiences, it is completely different. The tone is different. Like a lot of the internal language is different. And when you watch some of not Jay and Silent Bob, when you watch some Kevin Smith early stuff, I can see some of the things where he has made choices to get what he wanted to done without basically avoiding fights, avoiding confrontation. And as his career developed, I'm seeing more and more of the stuff he said he always wanted to do or would have changed.
Interesting, because thinking back to Mallrats, like there's amalgam references, which was the hot thing in comics right then, but only if you were into comics at a time that nobody was into comics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ooh, the post-boom era.
Yeah.
I liked the post-boom era. Stuff was good then.
Stuff was weird.
Yeah. Weird.
Yeah, stuff was more experimental. You could find the thing that you wanted.
Yeah, because nobody was expecting it to make money anymore. And so there wasn't the pressure to make this the most least common denominator appealing thing it could be. I mean, anymore, like a lot of this stuff is super focus tested if it reaches a certain level of success. So the more successful something becomes, the least genuine it is. And it's very rare that we see anything different. A lot of the reason that Kevin Smith has never made it to the humongous box office numbers is that he still produces genuine stuff. And that means that some people won't like it. But when you're betting with billions of dollars, some people matter. You need everyone to like it.
So Dungeon Novice in chat is saying he didn't see Chasing Amy until 2012, and it was a big oof. Chasing Amy is very different if you saw it in the 90s than if you saw it in 2012, and now it works a little bit more as a time capsule and as an idea of how things have changed. Although the best thing from Chasing Amy to me is seeing comic conventions from the 90s being portrayed on film almost perfectly, like the church basement or just basement of an office building, small conventions. Like someone seeing it now thinking like, oh, they just cheaped out on not recreating a San Diego Comic-Con, might be missing the fact that no, this is exactly what it was like, and we will never have comic conventions like that again. So Stephen Glicker, Roll for Combat, is saying in chat he saw Mallrats when it came out in an empty theater. That's something special because not a lot of people saw Mallrats, and that's why you saw it in an empty theater.
Oof.
Sorry, not that not a lot of people saw Mallrats. Lots of people have seen Mallrats, but not a lot of people saw it in theaters.
Right. And if you haven't seen Mallrats, consider seeing Mallrats. It's a very nerdy movie.
And Kevin Smith called it one of his most watchable movies. And I'll agree with that because a lot of his other ones, they have heart, but they also are heavy, or they have a lack of heart. Like some of his movies just kind of like goofy, like the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back and Cop Out, but Cop Out's got all kinds of problems on its own. But Mallrats is like the perfect combination of what you would think of as a Kevin Smith movie to me.
I want to shout out, I mentioned him earlier, the Goobertown Hobbies channel over on YouTube. The reason I want to shout out is that if you get into the painting scene, because so much of the high end of the painting scene is centered around the Warhammer fandom and products, some of the flavor of that also leaches into the support broadcasts and media. So you see a lot of like heavy metal themes in YouTube channels and and language that would befit that sort of audience, and nothing against that audience or that style of production. I have learned an incredible amount of material from Miniac, and he is totally about that Warhammer aesthetic in his videos. But Goobertown Hobbies, if you have not watched it, go watch it. Absolutely. Because it's like watching Bob Ross, but it's painting minis. He's got this super chill aesthetic. Everything's positive. Everything is motivational. The tips are practical. The steps are super easy. And it is fantastically different than what you normally see on YouTube and in this fandom. You will just marathon episodes and not realize you've done it.
I don't think I've watched this yet, so I am going to check it out.
Yeah, I actually don't. If the contrast paint video is not the one I recommend you watch first, you really need to become invested in this man before you hear his 10-minute talk about how important it is to experiment. A good starting point would be he painted an army of Chaos Knights in 24 hours and not speed painted. We're talking like painting contest level painting, like the best these things could possibly look level of painting. Watching that video is a great, if you watch that video, you will get a good feel for what his channel and his themes are. Also, you will learn the tip that if you want to paint yellow, start by spraying it pink.
Huh.
If you do a pink base coat or a pink spray coat on the miniature, prime it in pink, or prime it in black, or prime it in white, and use a pink spray paint on it. There's all kinds of ways. If you have an airbrush, you've got all this. And then you go with a zenithal, which is a zenithal highlight is when you take white paint and spray it above a model so that it is coming from the zenith, the top, where the sun would be if it's directly overhead. Or if you want to change that angle slightly, you shoot from a different angle. And that white will come down on the model where the sun and the light would have hit it, and the darker color won't get affected. And it is a really cool effect is once you've given something a zenithal, is you can look at it one way and it looks like you primed it white. You turn it around and it looks like you painted it pitch black. And then when you look at the model, it has all the gradients in between. And as long as you keep your paints thin, you can, that shading shows through. It takes care of a lot of your shading of your model for you for all of 2 seconds worth of work when you're priming it. But if you start with a pink base coat and you're painting yellow, and because he wanted to do these really cool yellow gradient Chaos Knights, or I'm going to use this technique when I start painting up my Chocobo Knights army because I want, Chocobos are yellow and I want that fade. If you do a zenithal and pink undercoat and you paint yellow over top of it, you will get this really cool bright yellow that will fade down smoothly into a deep orange in the shadows, and it looks amazing. And it's like, there's all kinds of little painting tricks like that you can work. I don't know what it's called specifically, the episode, but it's like Goobertown paints an army in 24 hours. He's done it twice, once with orcs and once with Chaos Knights. They're both fantastic videos, but the Chaos Knights one is a good introduction to what his channel's all about. A
couple of other things to shout out to. Critical Hit Cookies. So we've teased this shout out in a couple of segments now, but yeah, Critical Hit Cookies helped us with a special order that we were doing for the Paizo warehouse staff, and she could not have been easier to work with. She was enthusiastic about it. She offered us a discount to make sure that we can get more. I pitched some ideas. She was very quick to offer her expertise. Like, one of the ideas was that we would send green and purple cookies to represent goblins and the golem, and she was like, yeah, but people actually find desserts that have been food colored less palatable. You'll actually make these look worse. So I took her advice because she's the expert in this situation, and I really appreciate that she was willing to offer it. And so within a couple of days, we went from having this idea to being able to execute it, because she was super easy to work with, really helpful, and all in on the idea with us.
Yeah. Also, so, I have gotten to taste her cookies at PaizoCon.
I have not.
Rob Ponteas from the network, he brought some with him to to PAX East, not PaizoCon, to PAX East this last year, and he gave them out to us, and they were so delicious. These are quality cookies that are big cookies with good ingredients and combinations. These are not those wrapped up granny cookies that you can buy at the gas station that taste halfway like styrofoam. They're better than any cookies I've ever baked intentionally. And also they're so cheap. The price on them should not be that low. The cookies are better than that.
I was honestly surprised with how affordable it was. When I went into this thinking we're going to order some gourmet cookies, I had a budget in mind. And when she said, okay, so this is the quote, it's like, oh, that's so much lower than my upper limit of the budget. And so I was able to send more cookies for less. And apparently they were extremely well received by the Paizo warehouse staff.
Just to give you a point of comparison of her normal prices, the last time I sent Paizo cookies, when something really difficult was happening, I think it was something to do with like the second edition announcement and a bunch of hate train. Basically, I wanted to send them a morale booster, so I sent Paizo some cookies, and it cost me $56 to send them a dozen or 14 cookies. Like, it was a significant chunk to get some, high quality cookies. Like, these were going to be bakery cookies. I wanted them to have good cookies. Her normal price is that would have bought you 3 dozen. Just the ones on her website. The prices on her website. That would have brought you 3 times as many cookies. And they are just as delicious. They are wonderful. I want more of them. I'm going to order some after the show.
Finally, PaizoCon Online 2020 Countdown.
What?
Starts Tuesday, May 26th. It runs until Sunday, May 31st. And according to the official PaizoCon Countdown correspondent for No Direction, Mr. Darren Kaldemeyer, that is 27 days away, Pound.
That is not enough time. I'm scared.
You know what? It didn't seem so close until Darren got back to me and said 27 days, which I know is 100% accurate, because that is what Darren Kaldemeyer does.
We have less than 4 weeks to get this thing put together.
There we do. Yeah. Even the shortest month is longer than the time between now and PaizoCon Online 2020.
Oh, good God. We'll do it, gang.
Until next time, I'm Ryan Costello.
And I'm Jefferson J. Thacker, also known as Baron.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.